Beep, 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 beep. Welcome to the court of the Edijester. How we doing, good peeps? 'Tis another day, and we're off, as they say. Yes. Dennis. Our Dennis Noel Kavanagh, Dennis of the Kavanagh, as I call him, has been on a tweet. What can we call it? A tweet avalanche of wonderful polemic from Dennis. Now, so I thought we'd have a go through it, because it gives us plenty to think about. In Dennis here, I think lamenting might be the word. You may not forgive me for that word. I'm going to say lamenting, Dennis. The fall of the left, which makes for an interesting read. And I always like to think of Dennis writing, with a cigar and a good red in hand, or at the least a well-aged cask whiskey. I'd hate to think he was sat there with a pint of brown ale. I don't know why. It's just how I see him, right? So he's there in his robes and his wig, being all barristerish, and thinks, right, just going to toss off a quick tweet, and off he goes, right? And so we're going to go through it. I think it's really worth engaging with, because there's some great thoughts here from Dennis, as we always get when he does one of his polemical tweet threads. So here we go. This was from, I think, a couple of days ago. He starts by saying, the quintessential failure of the political moment is the bourgeois supremacy over reality. Fantastic beginning there. You could call it the rise of the lanyard class. You can call it the DEI sector being welfare for the middle class. How fantastic is that, Dennis? DEI, welfare for the middle class. You can call it sneering Remainer or the trans kid fashion accessory. You can call it any one of these things, because this is not a single point. Okay, political reality. It's an obnoxious constellation of adolescents' grievances. That's why if you know their view on climate change, you know their view on Gaza. Now, this is interesting. Yeah, see, I always say to the warrior teachers, and have, because I've been teaching them for the last week, they have a playbook. You can almost have a cards in your hand, like you played a game of cards. And then when they say something, you go, yeah, we had that one down. What? Oh, there we go. Yeah, trans women are women. Yeah, okay. What else? Oh, yeah, that's right. Everybody's racist. Yeah, we got that one. Yeah. There's no such thing as reality. Right, okay, there, we got that one. That's what it is. You could have this set of cards and sit there and just do that as they go round. Or you could play the bingo I made. If you've got the bingo card I made, that can be fun at work. If you haven't got it, let me know. So this is what makes it so interesting, is seeing this written down directly about how these people are. Oh, anyway, come be a warrior teacher, subscribe, do all the things for this, share it if you can, join me subscribe on Twitter, subscribe on the Substack, and come be a warrior teacher. We're starting in October. Dennis continues, this is dress-up box politics. They are not spiritual successors to George Orwell, preoccupied with poverty because the only poverty they know is their own. The poverty of boredom, the poverty of lack of identity. Interesting that you use the word identity there, Dennis. I think you and I have a different idea about this notion of identity, which I think is a dangerous therapeutic idea. The poverty of lack of purpose, lack of urgent heroism, i.e. there's no more dragons to slay. That's not true, by the way, but I can understand Dennis is saying here that's the problem they've got, and I agree with him. They don't do anything difficult. That's right, they don't. Having a gender identity is easy. Going on anti-Semitic hate marches is easy and popular. Screaming on TikTok about fire and brimstone climate crisis is easy. All of this is easy. All of this is for social media. All of this is for a bio. That's interesting you say all of this is for a bio. I'm going to go further than that, Dennis, and I'd be interested to hear your take on this. I'm going to say all of this is for a brand. It's a brand. It's a branding exercise. All of these people would discussed a true socialist of 1960s. Now, interesting. And also, there's something sad, Dennis. Is it me, or is something sad that you have to go back 65 years to make your point? If that's true, and I do think you are right, these were discussed true socialists of the 1960s. It simply tells me that socialism is a historical artifact that needs to go. It's about time we stopped our childish obsession with it. None of them would know what a union is other than a job opportunity. None of them would need one. None of them are learning in economics or social policy outside of middle-class identity bullshit. So they fall silent when they should speak. They have nothing to say about homelessness. They have nothing to say about record drug deaths in Scotland. They have nothing to say about castrated autistic kids or gender services. They have nothing to say about poverty wages. Now, this is interesting because that's a take that I think is what the left should be good at. What the left should be calling for is help for this, but it should be help which is in a very much a responsibility of the individual way. And if you look at the old left, people were very proud. You know, you've only got to see, for example, some of the kitchen sink dramas from the 1960s that were made in Britain, things like Sparrows Can't Sing, or even for that matter, Ladies Who Do, were the type of stories that talked about the working classes in 1960s Britain. And these were proud, independent people. That's where I think Labour has lost his way, is it became so collectivist, i.e. it tilted to corruption, which is why the unions are all gone. It tilted to corruption, just like everything else does, when it hangs around too long. So that's really interesting that you would pitch it around those things. Really interesting. Let's just keep going what he has to say. The problem we have is not the presence of the left, but the absence of it. Interesting. A left that has a mouth so full of it, knowing nothing of hunger. A left so bored of the UK is obsessed with Gaza, and a left that would abolish a female sex class because it prefers to live in clothes than bodies. The rainbow lanyard has spun a cobweb. Only now the spider is caught. Those who would fly any flag but their own will be defeated by those in reality who do not. Those who entertain themselves with parlour games of language and doomsday climate will give way to reality. Interesting. I would agree with you on this as well, Dennis. But I think going back to what you said about poverty and drug use, etc., it's really interesting. What I'm disappointed in the left is they've become the party of censorship. They've become the party of control. They've become the party of, in essence, leaving the individual at the behest of what will be the shark of technology. I mean, that's what's coming. What they should be arguing for is anti-censorship to ensure that there's never a central digital currency, to ensure that no big data can be utilized in a way which identifies the individual, that we get the state out of everybody's life, that we make sure that the state is so tied down that it can't interfere in individual people's lives in any way, that they would go to court as unions for their workers, for their employees, to prevent them from being force-fed psychosocial, neuro-eugenic training sessions like unconscious bias, race training, all that sort of nonsense. That's how I see the job of the left. Whereas what you've mentioned, I think, from that perspective, should be the job of all of them, but it's not. So I think there's two there. That strategic idea, and the hard groundwork that Dennis is talking about that the left needs to put in. I think that's really interesting. He continues. This is not some harmless bourgeois away day. It is one half of political discourse missing. It is one half of so utterly deluded and divorced from reality. It calls the modern slavery of prostitution and sex work as if pimps and their heroin are their knuckle dusters and guns were dreams. This is bourgeois supremacy. This is a left that got so fat it couldn't move. So drug-effed it made no sense. So besotted with the sex that's not having, all it does is talk about it. And so empty of identity, all it talks about is identities, because it is an echo of what is lost. I'm with Dennis on this one. I think Dennis hits an awful lot of nails on the head there. It is a fascinating problem, and one that I've discussed with the Warrior teachers at some length, because most of the Warrior teachers are left-leaning, and I at one time was. I'm now not, by the way. I just despair of them at this point, and I think that's the despair that Dennis has given us so clearly here. The left should be about the individual, and it's not anymore. It's not. The idea was to make things better for the individual, to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, I think the term was years ago. But if, as I said before, if you engage with media from the period, great pride, individualism, pride in one's country, pride in one's achievements, pride in the ability to get educated, pride in looking after one's family. They've lost a lot. That's because they're no longer the left. They're just a queer party. And that's the problem. That's the problem. And queer is at the root of this entire EDI, DEI boondoggle. And it's that is the major problem. We need to deal with this lanyard class, because I also think many of them are dark triad or cluster B psychotics. And we've got them in positions of power. Whereas years ago, I think we knew how to deal with them, and we kept them out of organisations. But we'll see. Anyway, Dennis, thank you. Thank you so much for this. I think it's cracking. It's a great thread. Please do go and let Dennis know what you think. I'll put the links in the doobers as usual. Other than that, I'm off. I'm going to go and have some bacon. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.